What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to the Doll Benfica podcast, episode number 197. We're creeping up on 200. On tonight's podcast, we will look back at the Braga game, which happened this past Friday when Braga visited Estadio da Luz. We'll also look back at the glorious night, some may call it glorious, in Munich against Bayern that happened yesterday for the Champions League. Was it quarterfinals? Where Benfica did pretty well. We'll also look ahead to Academica, which happens this coming Saturday. With me tonight, Mr. Patrick Kendrick.
Good evening, Alfredo. Good evening, Benfiquistas around the world. It's been a good week.
It sure has. Cristiano should be joining us shortly. He's scheduled to make an appearance, but he is working out some things on his end. So, Patrick, let's just get into the Braga game, which happened on Friday. You had the pleasure of calling the game from high atop Estadio da Luz for Benfica TV for all of us non-Portuguese pokers or non-Portuguese speakers. And I'll give you the lineup real quick. Ederson was in goal. Almeida, Lindelof, Jardel, and Eliseu across the back. Feza was back at defensive midfield. Sanchez was in front of him. Pizzi and Gaetan on the wings. Jonas and Mitroglou up front. Patrick, going into this game, an absolute one of those games that we've looked at the next 5 or 6 games that Benfica has left in the season, and we said this is an absolute crucial game that Benfica needs to win if there are to have any chances of getting to the title. What was your feeling going into this game?
Absolutely, I think there's a big build up to the game, a lot of anticipation, talk in the paper about there being 60,000+ at the game. A lot of that is because of Benfica's form being back top of the league again. A lot of it is the increased status that Braga have in the Portuguese game now this season. This is a team, by the way, who are still involved in all 4 competitions they entered at the start of the season. They're going to be in the Portuguese Cup final against Porto. They're going to be in the League Cup final against Benfica, as and when they decide on a date on that. They're still in the Europa League. They play against Shakhtar Donetsk tomorrow. So they're having a fantastic season. They were 4th. The only thing about Braga's league position was that it might have played out in Benfica's favour, and that's the case in hindsight. That was how it turned out to be, was that I think at the start of play they were 11 behind Porto in 3rd and 9 ahead of Aroca in 5th. So they're pretty much sure of 4th place, another appearance in the Europa League. But make no mistake, this is a good team, coached by Paulo Fonseca, who's doing a good job. They beat Porto in recent weeks. And yeah, as you said, we had 7 games left on the fixture list, and this was really the one that was earmarked as the most taxing for Benfica, along with possibly Marítimo away and Guimarães as well. So to ultimately win the game 5-1 was an absolutely stunning result, and not something certainly I expected. And I don't think many fans would have predicted that.
Yeah, and Patrick, you said they're involved in all fronts, which is something reflective of the form and the team and how Paulo Fonseca's had this team playing. As a matter of fact, they went into Estadio da Luz and they played pretty well in the first, I would say, 10-15 minutes. Hit the post in the first minute in a play almost similar to what we saw in Munich. Then Rafa had a chance to put it over Ederson, and he just missed that. So a very good Braga starting this game, and Benfica didn't really settle down until the goal by Mitroglou in the 17th minute, which was a bit of a giveaway by Braga, who wanted to play out of the back, ended up missing some passes, rebounded off a defender's foot, and ended up right in front of Mitroglou, and Mitroglou just put it away. But what was there an apprehension? You were in the stadium, as I've said. Was there an apprehension from the fans witnessing that start of the way Braga started the game, that this was going to be a very tough game for Benfica?
Yes, I think straight from the kickoff, Braga made their intentions very clear. They took the game to Benfica. They were moving the ball very swiftly. This is a very fluid attacking side who play crisp one-touch football. They get their 2 wide forwards right out onto the touchline. They stretch the whole pitch, and that was the case there. And there were some big open spaces, and it was one of the first times that I started to see Lindelof looking like he had a few problems. I mean, he was out of position for that opening chance. And again, it was I know we'll get onto the Bayern game later, but there's a huge similarities between the Vidal header yesterday, which proved to be the
Yeah.
winner for Bayern Munich, and the header that came back off the post inside the first minute.
Yeah.
Not least the time frame early on, but cross coming from the same side, the player arriving slightly late but unmarked, and the only difference here was that the header hit the post. And as we know, football's all about fine margins. And I do have a feeling that Benfica may well have struggled had they gone behind there, because there haven't been too many games at Estadio da Luz where Benfica have gone behind. I'm trying to think of anywhere they've gone behind this season and come back to win in the league. As we know what happened with Sporting, with 3 goals in the first half, and they were quite early on. And then the other way around, where they led and had that comeback in the other Clásico. But I think it was a nervy start, and I think the fans reflected that their response to it. They were very quiet, and Benfica needed that fortuitous goal to really get a foothold into it. It wasn't really like they were even coming back into the match. They started to settle a bit because they had that Rafa chance as well before the Mitroglou goal, and it was just a perfect storm for Benfica. Braga being slightly, that is the way they play, but being slightly complacent, I thought, playing the ball out of the back. The goalkeeper Mateus was taking a while over the goal kick as well, and then the defender just took a risk too many.
Yeah.
Even then, Renato's ball through gets a deflection. It breaks to Mitroglou, and the finish, by the way, I thought was excellent because it was no formality. He made it look that way, but that's the man in fine form, Mitroglou, and he's now scored his best ever goals tally in a season. So fair play to him. But I have to say that in the press conference afterwards, actually, Paulo Fonseca was adamant that there should be no blame apportioned to his defenders for making mistakes and trying to play out the back from goal kicks, because that's something that he tells them to do, and if they don't do so, they'll be dropped. So he takes full responsibility. So whether that was just him making a specific point to defend one of his players, in light of big games coming up, or whether that is actually the case and he was just being honest, it remains to be seen. But it definitely helped Benfica. And then a quick 1-2 either side of the half-hour mark, and the game was over. It was very surprising.
And Braga is known, and if any of you had a chance to watch Braga games, they're known for wanting to control games and to having the lion's share of the possession. So, as Patrick said, the players are encouraged to play the ball out of the back, to keep possession, to have a fluid game within their idea of what their game plan should be. So, you live and die by the sword, as people say. But nonetheless, a very good Braga team. And I think that the result really is something that's not reflective of the quality of this Braga team, really. So we were fortunate to capitalize on that mistakes in the 17 minutes, especially when the game was a little bit going towards Braga. And then, we scored 3 goals before the half. We got an assist by Jonas for the third game with his back. Patrick, of all the years that I've seen football played on television, I don't think I've ever seen a player deliberately assisting the guy with his back.
I mean, I've seen it a bit in La Liga. I've seen Cristiano do it on a couple of occasions, but that's normally when Real Madrid are cruising with 20 minutes to go and they're 5 or 6-0 up against Getafe or someone like that. But he just seemed full of confidence. He seemed in a position to do it. He let it do it, and then. But that was a wonderful goal.
Yeah,
Benfica winning the ball back, the ball forward to Jonas. I think it was clipped from possibly Eliseo off the back of Jonas, and then Mitroglou's run for Pizzi's strike was fantastic. Just gave him that half a yard, and then I didn't expect Pizzi to shoot. To be honest, I expected him just to feed it through to Mitroglou, but it was a lovely ball, lovely shot arrowed into the corner.
Yeah. And Patrick, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the warm-ups. My parents were actually at the stadium for that game, and I was talking to my father over the weekend, and he told me that during the warm-ups that was all Pizzi was really doing. He was shooting very low and to the corners, and he wasn't really sure who the guy was that was doing that, and then he later found out that there was Pizzi. Yeah, but I don't know if you had I don't know if you had a chance, but my dad picked up on that as he was watching the players warm up. and he was actually in a Terceiro Anel. That's what he was able to get tickets for. But he did tell me, the guy just all he kept doing was hitting low and hard to the corners every single time from a central position, and sure enough, there it is.
Absolutely.
And with the grass a little bit wet, as the guys the guys that take care of the pitch always make sure that the grass is wet at the beginning of the halves. That is a very hard shot to save. Something very low and placed in a far away corner or whatever corner it is a shot that's very hard for the keeper to get. And sure enough, 3-0 Benfica. We go into the locker room, and Patrick, there's not really a sense that, despite of Braga being a good team, going into the locker room, there's not really a sense that Benfica is going to give this up.
No, I mean it sufficed to look back over the statistics of Benfica's record at Estadio da Luz. I would be amazed if there's ever been an occasion when they've given up a 3-goal lead at home in the league since the ground was redeveloped. So, I just couldn't see it at all. Nothing in the game led me to believe that would happen. And Braga ended up hitting the woodwork again in the second half.
Yeah.
Another shot off a post, this time off the left-hand post, shot across goal. Edison was beaten once again, but they did create chances, but it was really down to those early ones, the header off the post, and then the Rafa shot over the top, which was Benfica playing a high line as they tend to do at home, caught out by the ball over the top, which was a lovely one. The touch was brilliant. The finish was still difficult. Would have been a wonderful goal, but he wasn't actually their biggest threat. Rafa, the main threat was Pedro Santos, who scored the penalty late on. I thought he was excellent. But they did enough, Benfica, by half time, and then they were able to manage the game, make some tactical substitutions to rest up some players for Wednesday night and for Tuesday night, excuse me, and then crucially they're able to score another 2 goals. The only rather disappointing thing for someone who's grown up on English football where goal difference is king is that all of these goals are rather moot in the end. It doesn't matter whether Benfica score 5, 1 or 23. They just have to keep winning games, and if they win every game between now and the season, they'll definitely be champions. If Sporting win every game and Benfica drop any points at all, then it will go the other way. So it's great for the fans. I mean, that brought up 100 goals in all competitions this season, which they're asking about in the press conference. And I know it's good to get some quotes on that, but I was sitting there watching it and thinking, well, ultimately it's irrelevant, which is a shame. I think head-to-head results can be good on things like Champions League group stages when you're only playing the other teams a couple of times. But over the course of the league season, I think if you're to incentivize and encourage attacking football and entertainment, which is what everyone wants, everyone goes to see goals. And I think there should be some reward for a team that is able to consistently score 4, 5 and 6. That's now Benfica's games on a Friday night. It's a stat I mentioned on commentary. I think they've played 6 times on Friday night now, and that's an average of 4 goals in every game over the 6 games on a Friday evening. So clearly they enjoy playing then. But this is a team that's just irresistible at times going forward, and I do think it's a shame not to be rewarded for scoring that many goals, because it was a real statement. Benfica 5, Braga 1. This is a team that beat Sporting in the Cup. This is a team that defeated Porto recently. And Benfica just brushed them aside. And I do still look at the Marítimo game as the one for me, really. Having watched games when Benfica go to Madeira, and having watched the other 2 teams go there, and it is a struggle there. And I went myself recently and had my own issues getting back with air travel. So I can tell you that it's not an easy place to play. I can only imagine. So that one for me will be if they can overcome that hurdle. I know there's Vitória de Guimarães who are no slouches either, but this felt like a significant step towards the league title, and possibly one where we'll look back, hopefully in a few weeks, and say that was where the title was won, potentially.
Yeah, and it's a shame that we give up the 1 goal after such a great performance. But finally, we get to shut people up that we hadn't been called any penalties against this year, especially coming from Sporting. And then the official word from Sporting is that, you were winning 5-1, 5-0, so the penalty didn't really matter if you had a penalty. So it's a moot point on their part. But this is just clowning around, Patrick. What do you make of this controversy? Sporting, who went almost 4 years without having a penalty called against them. In those 4 years, I think they only won the championship once. And now all of a sudden, that because Benfica doesn't get penalties called against them, this is an issue that they're going to bring up?
I think you need to look at how many matches these teams tend to lose per season. I was talking to a friend of mine who was visiting in Lisbon this week. I mentioned the statistic to him because he was curious about the story, having seen some of it on Twitter. And he said, well, objectively, these teams tend to dominate every match. So when you dominate a match, I mean, even in an average game of football, how many penalty appeals are there? Let's say 1 or 2, maybe max 1 per side, minimum 1 per side, maybe a bit more than that, depending on the game. Then you have to ascertain whether it is a penalty or it isn't. And people tend to appeal for everything. Then you need to ascertain that these sides typically dominate and they're playing against other teams that, unless they're playing against one of the other 2 big sides, but even then the games tend to be quite tight. The smaller sides aren't going to create many opportunities against Benfica, let alone have penalty appeals. So once you filter through all of that and you actually probably look at the objective numbers, and if you were to take some old footage and go through it instant by instant, I think over that time period, maybe there's a handful of dubious ones, which again are subjective. This comes back to the whole argument about technology in football. Do we want it for everything? Well, we could have it for penalty decisions, but is that going to help anyone? I was watching the Paris Saint-Germain against Manchester City match earlier, and anyone that watched it will have seen Blaise Matuidi running through early on, and he was caught by Eliakim Mongala, and some people said penalty, other people didn't. You see, so it's such a subjective thing that I think it's Look, it's a way of building a narrative to say that Benfica are favoured or there's some corruption going on, which I don't think is the case. And to be honest, I thought it was pathetic. Really, it had no bearing at all on the outcome of the match. And I think the suggestion with that ludicrous tweet from the Sporting official account was that Benfica seemed to have some way of controlling the referees, and somehow they were able to get a message across during the game, which was a case of, we're winning comfortably enough now, you can give a penalty. Oh, and by the way, Nelson Semedo, please leave your foot in and make sure it's a foul. If you just look at the actual evidence and and you break down these conspiracy theories, they're absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
And for the record, I would say the same if it were Benfica saying it. I would say the same if it was Porto saying it. I didn't really expect such a big reaction on social media. To be honest, to me, it was just as a foreigner covering Portuguese football, I didn't expect to ever see a official club social media account openly attack another club based on nothing really. And I think, unfortunately, this seems to be par for the course with Mr. Bruno de Carvalho, who we don't tend to mention too many times on this pod.
Yeah, and Patrick, you actually went on Twitter and you had comments regarding Sporting's tweet, and somebody from the Benfica blogsphere actually made a blog post and quoted you. So you're achieving some kind of a celebrity status here.
Well, it was unintentional, believe me. I'd rather have it for the quality of my work on Benfica's games. So we've got 3 more to go, and hopefully we'll be in Marques again come the end of the season, because it was a great party last May, and I'd only been in the country a couple of months, and I'd only done 5 games, I think. So it was difficult to feel a complete part of it. I think I would feel very much a part of it now. So that's what I'm looking forward to and keeping an eye on. I went to Restelo as well on Monday night, and Bull and Inch were dreadful. So very, very poor. So I think for Benfica to rely on other teams is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
looking at Porto being beaten by Tondela, I don't think they're going to take points off Sporting. So I think it's going to be Braga on the last day of the season.
Yeah, I think that this time Sporting didn't need Tonel to do him a little favor. So that kind of worked out for him. But one last thing before we move on to the next topic. Lindelof has actually, with the game against Braga, I think has reached some kind of a clause in his contract where he was awarded, don't quote me on this, but somewhere around 200 something thousand euros for reaching this clause of games played for Benfica, games started for Benfica. That's quite impressive. The other impressive stat is that we have been without Luizão for 26 games, and we haven't skipped a beat, whether it was Lisandro coming in or the youngster Lindelof coming in. Really, we feared the worst with Luizão going down, and then with Lisandro going down also. But really, quite a very, very good, solid back line, especially the two center guys.
Yeah, I think. I know we're about to start discussing last night's Champions League quarter-final first leg, but Jardel was immense last night against Bayern Munich. I thought he was absolutely brilliant against Lewandowski, who's widely regarded as the best number 9 in world football, possibly along with Ibra, who's I guess a 9.5, or potentially Suarez, depending on it all comes down to what you categorize them. But Lewandowski's record is outstanding.
Yeah.
And I thought Jardel equipped himself very well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take advantage of the segue and turn right into the Bayern game, which happened yesterday in Munich, to a sold out stadium. I think traveling support 4,000 to 5,000 Benfica fans made their way into Europe. If you want to check that out, there's some videos on YouTube of Benfiquistas in the streets of Munich representing Benfica. So if you want to check that out, this is quite interesting. And then at the end of the game, you could really hear them. But I'll give you the lineup. It's basically the same lineup that we saw against Braga. Ederson, Almeida, Lindelof, Jardel, and Eliseu across the back. Feza, Renato, Pizzi and Gaetan, Jonas and Mitro. Really, this is currently Benfica's perhaps strongest lineup, without a doubt, Patrick.
Yeah, I think Andre Almeida offers you more experience and better defensive ability than Nelson Semedo. I don't think there's any doubt that Nelson Semedo is the better long-term prospect. He's 4 years younger than Andre Almeida, and he's a better athlete. He's quicker. He's more exciting going forward. But there are still some question marks about him defensively, and so Andre Almeida is that one for me. Eliseu has been in charge of that left back spot all season and shook off the rivals to that with Grimaldo coming in. The one for me is, and I know a lot of fans tend to think the same, is it Feza or is it Samaris? Personally, I like Samaris as he's more of a ball player, but I can understand how against Bayern Munich, when you expect to have less possession, how you might want Feza, who, by the way, covered a lot of ground, more than any other Benfica player. So he is more mobile than he looks. He's a very well built guy, but he does tend to get around the pitch, and positionally he's good. The front two pick themselves. And Pizzi is the only other one. I know he gets a lot of critics. I really don't understand the criticism for Pizzi. It's a shame Chris is not quite with us just yet. Otherwise, we could debate that. It tends to be brought up on every episode of the pod. But I think Pizzi's having a very good season actually, and I think he's a much better player out on the wing than he is through the middle. But yeah, as you said, the team as things stand is very easy to pick. And why bring back Lisandro when Lindelof is playing so well? No reason to drop him at all, and I think that would be the wrong statement to drop him. And that's what I like about Rui Vitória. He brings someone in if there's a gap there, or if there's someone suspended or injured, and if that guy does a job and keeps playing well, they keep the place as long as possible. Look at Andre Almeida with Semedo getting injured early in the season. He's come back in for a couple of starts, but hasn't won that place back. And it's been very much the same with Lindelof, and we saw it with Samaris and Feza. Feza was injured. Samaris came in for 3 games, then got suspended. Feza got back in, and every time Feza's been available since, it's been him starting.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps the only thing that I would have changed in a lineup was perhaps Jimenez with Mitroglou, because I think Jimenez provides a little bit more work. And when you're facing a team that provides a lot of possession, what plays with a lot of possession, I thought that Jimenez would probably adjust better to closing down passing lanes, closing down guys. Just in general, just perhaps a better worker defensively for what Rui Vitória was going. That was my only thing about this lineup. But the man knows best. He spends a lot of time with these guys on the training pitch. He watches them day and perhaps night too. He knows what he's doing. But that would have been my only change in hindsight, and perhaps even before the game. That would have been my only change in the lineup. But nonetheless, a good start for Benfica. Well, an auspicious start for Benfica, giving up the goal in the second minute, a ball that was crossed in, and it looked like you said, Patrick. What's his name? Vidal stepped in between Jardel and Eliseu. Eliseu was faced with two guys, but Vidal stepped in and he anticipated Eliseu and put the ball away. But Patrick, seeing Benfica giving up a goal in the second minute, and knowing of all the perhaps a lot of pessimism towards this fixture, especially playing who we were playing. Did you feel that game was going to get ugly or going to get away fast?
I did, yeah, and perhaps unfairly so. I thought in the build-up to the game I was slightly apprehensive about how it was going to go, just because of how strong Bayern are. Nothing against Benfica really, but this is a side we saw them turn over Porto last season in the second leg, albeit that was when they had to come out and make a statement, having lost the first leg 3-1. We saw against Juventus in the previous round that despite trailing by 2-0, they got back into it and then they steamrolled them in half time. This is a team in extra time, excuse me. This is a team that once they start to pick up some momentum are very, very hard to stop. So naturally, when you then see them score inside 2 minutes at home in a quarter-final, you think, this could be 3 or 4-0. They're going to get it done in the first leg. And unfortunately, the 60+ thousand in Luz next week are not going to really get their money's worth. It wasn't how it turned out. In some ways, rather counterintuitively, it turned out to be a bit of a blessing for Benfica, because Bayern got the lead. That settled their crowd down. They were quite comfortable to carry on keeping possession.
Yeah.
They felt they weren't in a rush. They didn't need to force going to get another goal. And in the end, they didn't actually create too many chances. Ederson made a few saves. Benfica had 2 or 3 very good chances themselves. But had it stayed at 0-0 a bit longer, maybe things could have got worse for Benfica. Jonas is suspended, having picked up a yellow card. That is going to be a big miss for Benfica. But I should make a point here that, yes, Bayern are very strong, but they have some players missing. They're missing Arjen Robben. They're missing their 2 main centre-backs, Jerome Boateng and Holger Badstuber, who's been injured for quite a while. So they're playing Alaba at centre-back, who's a left winger or a left-back. He can play in a number of positions. A lot's been made of how versatile he is and Guardiola's use of him, alongside this young kid, Kimmich. So there's definitely, we shouldn't be too surprised to see the fact that Benfica created chances. This is a side that tend to play fairly open as well. They are a lot of things Bayern Munich, but they're not known for being the most solid defense in the world. It comes as a byproduct really of dominating football matches and hogging possession. You don't tend to afford the opposition too many chances as a result. But from the occasions I've seen, in which I must be honest are limited mainly to this stage of the Champions League, they will give the opposition the odd chance, and it's just a shame that Benfica were unable to capitalise that excellent block from Javi Martinez, which, despite his the way he despite his body position, it did seem to strike him on the chest, which is amazing. So slightly unlucky, but definitely something that can give Benfica a chance going into the second leg.
Yeah, so I think that Benfica started the game and they were a little perhaps maybe starstruck, in the first, I would say, 15 minutes, and then after they adjusted. And perhaps it has a lot to do with what you mentioned, that Bayern did kind of slow down a little bit from those initial 5 minutes, thinking that, all right, this is this easy. The goals are just going to come if we keep playing the way we know. But Bayern, if you guys have been following Bayern, they have struggled the past couple domestic fixtures. They have won, but they haven't won them all in their convincing style that they've had throughout the season. And there's a lot of people talking about how Bayern was very, very poor against Benfica. But the one thing is that you can't take away credit from the way Benfica played. The team knew exactly what they were going to face. They set up nice. They were compact. The lines were nice and pushed up against each other. They closed off the spaces in the middle. Pizzi and Gaetan were closing down the middle to make sure that we weren't getting beaten on those combinations that Bayern does so well. They're a characteristic of Pep's teams. And we were just giving them the outside. And I thought that Benfica set up very well. I think that going into the half with the 1-0 result, and listening to Rui Vitoria's words, and telling them how well they were doing, I think it really settled the team. In the second half, we didn't notice that initial 15-minute rampage or barrage, if you want to call it, from Bayern that could have put Benfica in any danger. And really, we only saw Bayern danger really in the last perhaps 10 to 5 minutes of the second half, when Benfica seemed that they were tired.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fatigue will start to get you, because this is another level to anything Benfica have experienced this season. Yes, they played against Atletico Madrid twice in the group stage, but I think the intensity levels in the group stage aren't the same as they get to in the knockout stages. Clearly, I was watching Benfica last night, but from the highlights, it looked like Barcelona Atletico Madrid was played at a very high tempo. I can tell you that Paris Saint-Germain against Manchester City tonight was played at a very high tempo. So clearly, this is the elite stage of Europe's best sides in the best club competition in the world. So the level is high, the tempo is high, and you're playing against one of the favourites for the tournament, who are playing at home and who are looking to add to their lead. So it's only natural that you are going to be exhausted afterwards, physically and mentally, because it requires so much concentration. I thought Benfica's focus was brilliant. Besides that lapse in the second minute where Eliseo didn't track Vidal, there was very few instances where you could say Benfica switched off or lost concentration, and that's the easy way of telling that is from the scoreline, because these sides are so good that as soon as you do just switch off for a moment, they will punish you. I thought Edison was good again, did what he had to do, and he's been a very able deputy for Julio César.
Yeah, and Jardel, as you mentioned, I thought that Jardel was an absolute beast, along with Fesa. I thought Renato, for the 18 years old, was a very influential player for Benfica in the first half, especially when he took the ball and he would just not be afraid to go and progress the team into Bayern's half. I thought he did very well. I thought Gaetan could have done better. Jonas' miss is not something that he usually does. Those he usually puts away, albeit with his left foot. I thought that Mitroglou had a whiff also. Following Jonas's miss in the 64th minute, Mitroglou could have had a very good attempt on goal, and he just ended up missing the ball altogether. We are a team that this season we have put away the very little chances that we create sometimes, and it was perhaps something that was missing in this game. But I thought overall, that the team did very, very well. There's teams that go into Germany to play lesser clubs in the Champions League, lesser German clubs in the Champions League, and end up defeated 2-0. Such was the case for Real Madrid tonight. But that's neither here nor there. But let's look at the second half. What we got? Obviously, you've already mentioned Jonas picked up a silly yellow card. He knew he was in danger of picking up the yellow card. He picked it up. He is now going to miss the second leg. How how do you see Rui Vitoria setting up this team? Do you think it's going to be a forward for forward, or you think he's going to opt out for a guy that's more of a playmaker that plays behind the center forward?
I think it'd be a risk to change the formation now. Early on in the season, we saw the 4-2-3-1. It didn't work. Early on with this 4-4-2, people weren't sure about the role of Jonas, and with Gaetan, the team, a lot of media outlets, the channels broadcasting were putting the lineup on the screen with the graphics as a 4-2-3-1. It hasn't been. It's been a very conventional 4-4-2 for the bulk of the season, and that's been when Benfica have been getting results. Yes, Jonas drops in and comes short, but that's quite standard for a front two. The wingers push on very high. They're given license to come inside. They're able to swap over, etc. Gaetan will always come back inside, but it's a 4-4-2 essentially. That works because of Jonas and Mitroglu's partnership predominantly. It's the two strikers that really make it work for me. Plus the dynamic of the midfielders with Renato playing that 8 role, doing as much defensively as offensively. Now the problem you have is neither Mitroglu nor Jimenez can play the Jonas role as far as I'm concerned. The option you could have is Jimenez is more mobile than Mitroglu. So typically he will stretch the pitch, he will make runs in behind, which normally creates space for Jonas to come short into. Mitroglu does a similar role, albeit by pinning one of the centre backs because he's got very good hold-up play. So the option you could have is you could play them both. You could still have Jimenez doing that. You could have Mitroglu holding the ball up. But what you need there is, in the absence of Jonas, you need runners going on from beyond in midfield. You need Gaetan getting forward beyond the last defender. You need Pizzi to do likewise. So I think he's going to go with 2 up front, but I think it's going to take some real work on the training ground in order to figure this out, which, quite frankly, Benfica don't have. They play Academica at 6:30 on Saturday. All the focus now will be on that game. If it weren't, that would be wrong, I think, and it would go against everything that Rui Vitoria said in his press conferences. It would go against everything that it would go against logic and conventional wisdom, because as soon as you do that, you could lose to Academica and then suddenly your title challenge is compromised. So they'll play on Saturday. Sunday will be recovery. So they'll have a session on Monday and then a tactical one on Tuesday. So it'll be Tuesday when all of this is discussed. But it needs a massive performance from Mitroglu and Jimenez, just in terms of the way I think the game could go. The only scoreline I see Benfica going through with is 2-0. I can't see them scoring 3 times. So I think as soon as Bayern, if and when Bayern scored, Benfica would be struggling. So what I'd like to think is if Benfica can keep it as 0-0 as long as possible, and then score 2 relatively late goals, that could be a route through. But make no mistake, Bayern are very much favourites. That away goal would have been massive for Benfica. A 2-1 would have been so much better than a 1-0. But just the fact that the tie is still alive going into the second leg, I think, is something we need to give Benfica enormous credit for. And also Rui Vitoria, his first time at this level, coming up against the man who's widely accepted as the best tactician in Europe. And I thought he equipped himself very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that perhaps Jimenez is not the right guy to play in that position because he just doesn't have the touch to play in that position. You need somebody with a touch and you need somebody with the vision because, like you said, you got the runners on the wings, which that guy is an important part of the setup for the guys on the wings. And to get both Pizzi and Gaetan involved, you need a guy with feet and vision to be able to feed him and to be able to create mismatches and to do combinations with those guys. I don't know if Jimenez is the choice behind Mitroglou. I think I much rather see Gaetan, perhaps maybe even Talisca in that position, even though Talisca is always a big question mark when he comes in, which Talisca we're going to see. But ideally, I think that a playmaker guy behind the forward would probably be ideal. Also a guy that can drop into the midfield and even out the numbers. I don't know if Jimenez has that in him because he's not really a guy. He's a guy that works a lot, but perhaps not your best defensive guy, or a guy that could make a defensive play based on his positioning. So that's what I'm questioning. So I'll be curious to see what how Rui Vitória is going to set up this team come Wednesday. But here's the thing, and this is actually a question from one of the guys that follows us in Portugal, Superman Torres, and he basically says that when Benfica drew Bayern, that a lot of Benfiquistas, so-called Benfiquistas, thought that this was a foregone conclusion or a done deal, that Benfica didn't have any chance. After seeing the way Benfica played in Munich, and the way the whole thing played out with just us giving up one goal, do you feel that Benfica has a chance at the Estadio da Luz in front of 60,000 people pulling for Benfica? Do you feel that Benfica has a chance to get past this Bayern team?
I do. Ultimately, it's the German champions against the Portuguese champions. This is the Champions League. Benfica aren't there by accident. Yes, Bayern are favourites, and rightly so. Semi-finals last 4 years, but it's 11 guys playing against another 11, and a lot of it is about discipline. It's about work rate. It's about getting the game plan right and a bit of luck. And there's no reason whatsoever why Benfica can't beat Bayern Munich. We've seen some upsets this season. I won't go through them because in this instance it would be Benfica as the big gun, losing a game. I can think of one early on in the season. There's no reason why Benfica can't do it. They have to get their game plan spot on. And I don't buy into this theory of you read stuff in the papers where it has to be, Benfica's best performance of the season has to coincide with Bayern having an off night. I don't think that's the case. I think Benfica's best performance can be enough to counteract Bayern Munich, provided they're able to get things right tactically and then execute the game plan and take their chances as and when they come up. Because make no mistake, chances will come. Benfica are a formidable prospect at home. We only need to look back at that run, 55 home games, unbeaten in the league, which came to an end earlier this season. That's in the league, but this is not a trip that anyone relishes. Bayern will be pleased to have the league from the first leg. They won't be complacent, and they know they have a job to do. Because make no mistake, if Benfica score first in the second leg, and I don't think it's going to end 0-0, so there will be a first goal. If Benfica get it, then Bayern will know about it, and there'll be an amazing atmosphere before kickoff. It will get even better if Benfica score. So I see no reason why there shouldn't be some cause for cautious optimism.
Yeah. Do you think that Bayern will approach the game differently now that they've seen Benfica? I mean, there was a lot of talk pre-game or in the run-up to the game, both from Bayern players and Pep Guardiola, that were basically, if you want to call it politically correct talk, they didn't want to downplay the matchup. Praised Benfica quite a bit. Pep had praises for Benfica's defense, which he then after the game, he told, look, I told you guys about Benfica's defense. I've seen this Benfica, and not a lot of people, with the exception of Sporting, not a lot of teams create chances against Benfica. And he was right. But definitely a different approach by Bayern to this game, where they know they can't snooze. They really got to take the game to Benfica. And in all honesty, Benfica playing at home, this might play into Benfica's favor.
Yeah, the big difference with the first leg is Benfica cannot afford, in general terms, I don't think they can afford to concede. But if they concede it inside the first 10 minutes again, that's just going to take the entire sting out of the whole atmosphere, and Bayern will pretty much have things under control then. The game needs to stay at 0-0 as long as possible, and then Benfica need to score. And I think when they do score, they need to quickly build on that momentum and really catch Bayern off guard, hit them with the shock of the aggregate score going to 1 each, and then try and get a second. And the later that happens in the game, the more chance Benfica have got, as I've said. But Bayern will come. They'll be respectful. I don't think they'll dominate possession as much. I think we'll see Benfica on the ball a bit more. And why not? I think it's get the crowd behind you, whip up the atmosphere, make an early statement. and there's no reason why Benfica can't do it. I think it's going to be very exciting. I can't wait to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I was there. So anyway, done with Bayern. Let's turn our attention now to Academica, which comes up before the second leg of the Bayern game, as Patrick said, Saturday, 6:30 local in Coimbra. Academica is actually 17th placed, 5 wins, 17th place, from 5 wins, 8 ties, and 15 losses. So they're in the relegation zone. At home, 5 wins, 4 ties, 5 losses. Last time Benfica lost in Coimbra, you'd have to go back to the 1973-1974 season, so 42 years ago. The referee for this game, João Capella. Look, we can't be thinking ahead to the Bayern game. We can't be thinking past this Academica team, because Academica is in a fight to stay up. Today, I was listening to a press conference from one of their players, and they said that they're ready to die on the field in order to get the points that they deserve. Obviously, a lot of these teams, they know how close the championship is, and by no means they don't want to be accused of opening their legs, so to speak, for Benfica. And this is obviously going to be Benfica, primarily a Benfica supporter fan base in the stadium, as it usually is in Coimbra. But the team needs to remain focused on this game at hand, because this is one of the easy games that you need to win against the penultimate team in the table. You really need this game, Patrick.
You do, and I think Benfica have to work on the basis that they're going to need to win every game between now and the season. That's the easiest way of calculating things, and then you leave nothing to chance. You don't rely on anything. It is significant that once again, I think the Champions League run has helped on this score, because it meant that because Benfica played on Tuesday, because they played yesterday, the other game was brought forward to the Friday. Then Sporting had to go 3 days where they were 5 points behind. Because this game was now played on Tuesday, and with Benfica you have to play the following Wednesday, that means that they'll play on Saturday. Sporting, having played on Monday, I don't think play until Sunday. So once again, Benfica are playing
No,
first.
I think Sporting plays Saturday after Benfica, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
okay, but they're still after
They're
Benfica.
still
So
after Benfica, yeah.
this is a psychological advantage which shouldn't be overlooked. It's something that the Napoli coach Maurizio Sarri was bemoaning the other day. That Napoli have played after Juventus 4 or 5 times in the last few weeks. And it's a similar dynamic, because Juventus had a 3-point cushion over Napoli, and every week they were making that 6. All right, you still got a game in hand, but there's a difference between being 3 behind, being 6 behind, and having a game in hand, and having to win that game.
Yeah.
So I think it is to Benfica's advantage that they play first and they go and win convincingly like they did against Braga.
Yeah.
But as you said, Academica, I think they can still catch, I believe it's Boavista in 16th, and it certainly was a couple of weeks ago. So, it's it needs to be a solid performance,
Yeah.
and Benfica can't afford to play like they did against Boavista, because they got out of jail that night with the late goal from Jonas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who is going to have a point to prove, by the way, because he knows he won't be involved against Bayern Munich. So don't be surprised to see a wonderful performance from Jonas on Saturday, just to atone for that yellow card, because I'm sure he'll be gutted to miss the game.
Absolutely, you bring up a great point. But like we said, focus needs to be there, and this is the game at hand. This is the game we got to win first before all else. And this is the battle that we're in. I think the Champions League, the fact that we've gotten so far, is almost a bonus. I think that the championship remains our primary focus for this season. So we have to beat Academica, regardless of what place they are on the table. We have to beat them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So expect a very good performance by Benfica. And I think at this point, when you play usually teams that are low on the table, it might have a tendency to be a trap game. I think that there's no trap games for Benfica, because, as Patrick said, Benfica have mentalized themselves that these are all finals and all need to be won. Great point by Patrick. Sporting playing out of after Benfica, there's an added, if you will, an added pressure, especially when Benfica play. After Benfica plays and wins, there's an added pressure of having to win that game. And usually games where Sporting is playing, that things are not going that well for them, it might turn in to be into a nervous performance by them, and they might struggle. Of course, they play Marítimo this weekend, which is not going to be easy. It's not going to be Bulnes for sure. So we have to do our job against the Academica, and we got to keep doing our job till the end of the season. I think that there's no doubts about it. To me, it's very clear. It's clear as day. So whatever happens on Wednesday happens. But to me, the most important thing for me is beating this Academica this Saturday. So we'll just have to see how that develops. I think that's pretty much all we got. I have a couple questions here. Diogo Reis is asking, how do you guys see Luizão's future at Benfica? Whatever the case, I hope he goes out like a noble warrior that he is. I think that Luizão's years with or tenure with the club, I don't think that the club would disrespect him in any way or push him aside. I think that Luizão still has a huge role to play in this Benfica team, and regardless of the emergence of Lindelof, you also have the Argentine Lisandro. There was a lot of talk before the end of the season, or even at the break, that they had offers from Italy. As a matter of fact, I think that it was made public that Benfica refused an offer from Fiorentina, if I'm not mistaken. And Patrick, you're in tune more with the Calcio. You could probably tell me more about that. But I think that Luizão still has a huge role in this Benfica team, and he's not going to go away. He's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, no, that I'm just on the Fiorentina thing. That was something that Paulo Sousa admitted in a press conference, and he basically used his press conferences to make a point and criticize the Fiorentina ownership for not being backed enough. He felt in the transfer market either last summer or in January. So there is still interest in Lisandro, but he decided to stay. Or Benfica rejected the offer, and just unfortunate for him that he got injured because he was playing very well. I don't think Luizão is going to play again this season, just because the injury has gone on longer than expected, I think, and those that are coming the side of doing well, I think it would take him a while to get back to full fitness. But he's not going to leave this summer, I don't think at all. No, I see him with at least another season at Benfica, and even if he only plays half the games, he is such a good reader of the game and so experienced and such a good leader that he will have a big part to play in the dressing room, on the pitch. No, I don't think there's any danger of him leaving this summer.
Yeah, and Patrick, Sergio Cabasso on Twitter at your boy Hodge is saying that what are the odds that Patrick Kendrick, prior to the Braga game, mentions that Benfica hadn't scored on a set piece and Pizzi's in a goal slump, and both end against Braga.
Yeah, no, that was nice. That Pizzi had gone half a dozen games without a goal or an assist. That was after 2 goals and 4 assists in his previous 6, and he scored that great goal. And of all the players to step up and score the free kick, I didn't know Samaris had it in him. Only scored his first Benfica goal earlier on this season, and that important win over Moreirense at home, and then he scored that free kick, which was an absolute beauty. So. We got the penalty against out the way. We've got the free kick, direct free kick goal out the way. Any other stats that come up in the papers, I'm sure that'll be. It's just one of these quirks of football. The media make a story or something one week, and people's attention is drawn to it, and then suddenly someone is inspired and goes and scores it.
It's the positive energy of the universe. How many times have we shit talked players here on the podcast, and the next day, the next weekend, they come back to prove us wrong? That happens all the time, and we've been shit talking Pizzi all this time. And it seems that he had a good game against Braga and a very decent game against Bayern. So maybe the slump is over. Maybe Cristiano can eat some crow.
Well, the good thing is the game is next Wednesday, isn't it? So unless there's a hugely rescheduled Benfica podcast, maybe we could get Chris focusing entirely on Jimenez on Tuesday night, and he might come up with a hat trick on the following day.
Yeah, we will be recording next week's pod on Tuesday. I don't think we're gonna wait until the Bayern game happens on Wednesday. We will recap that the following week. So watch for the podcast on to take place on Tuesday. We will talk about the Academica game as well as talk a little bit more about the Bayern game and all the developments that have happened in the media. We'll probably take some words out of the presser on Tuesday nights and comment on those words. So watch out for that. Also, tonight's podcast number 197. We're coming up on the 200th. If you guys were around for the 100th episode, I asked everyone to just record a short message to us, maybe congratulating us on the 200th episode. So if you want to do that, Benfica podcast at Gmail. If you want to send that in, and we'll promise to edit them in on the podcast so you get to hear your voice and everybody gets to hear your voice. If you want to do something funny, you could also do that, but keep it short. Let's not make this some kind of a declaration of love for us. So keep it short, like 10, 15 seconds is good enough for us. So I think that's all I got, Patrick. What about you?
Yeah, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah. So don't forget to check out our friends over at planetbenfica.co.uk. At Patrick Kendrick, only 1K in there is where you can find Patrick on Twitter. If you're not following him, then I don't know what you're waiting for. At Benfica Podcast, at 10CO10, at Steve Santos 6. Everybody should flood Santos's Twitter, asking him when he's coming back on the podcast. I think he deserves that at this point.
Come back, Steve. We miss you.
Yeah. So as I've said, if you want to send in your pre-recorded message for episode number 200, Benfica Podcast at gmail.com. Or if you want to just DM me and I'll get you the address out if you don't have a pen to write it down. Anyway, it's been really nice having you. Chris joined us for 2-3 minutes and then he was waiting to talk and he just left. So I don't know what happened. Maybe he had to curse somebody out in the street and had to go like he always does. Anyway, thanks for checking us out. Don't forget to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or RSS feed. Also on YouTube. Hit the like button. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And I think that's about it. Thank you very much, Patrick. Always a pleasure having you on, your insight and your points of view. And we'll talk to you guys again next week.
Cheers, guys. Pleasure. Good night.
See you, everybody.